If you use your own pronouns, or worse, if you demand that we use your pronouns when referring to you, here's what and how most people think of you. If you use, quote, your own pronouns, end quote, or worse, if you demand that we use your pronouns when referring to you, let me tell you how most people regard you. They think you're likely not all that bright, you're scrabbling desperately to fit in and at the same time to latch onto something that's at the avant-garde of fixing society's ills so that you can think you're doing something important. So, despite all your plainly expressed insecurities, this is what your pronouns do, you can still, quote, make a difference, end quote. You think that make a difference is a significant, deep phrase instead of the meaningless throwaway that it actually is. Meaningless? But everyone says it. Yup, and it means nothing. Everything you ever do, no exceptions, makes a difference on some level, and ultimately on the level of the entire planet. Everything, including twitching your finger and clipping your toenails. The real questions are, what difference are you making? How significant is it? And the most important question of all, is it a positive difference? Pronoun users make the mistake of confusing insecurities and egotism with depth. As a result, they figure that mollifying that egotism with things such as pronouns constitutes deep, important actions, thinking, and ringing declarations. And the world around them validates this nitwittery with applause and censorship of the scornful derision that would naturally greet such nitwittery. Back to what nearly all of society thinks of you when you proclaim that you use custom pronouns. As you're striving for validation and the applause of others, you're trying to show us all just how deep you are, but we're figuring that you don't do a lot of thinking, and that the thinking you actually do focuses principally on how you can make your thinking conform to the current of thinking that you've adopted. It's not that you're all that lazy, but you're terrified of having to think for yourself, for fear of not being able to pull it off. A potentially well-founded fear. So you've found your herd of sheep, and you're in that herd, and you won't be persuaded, today at least, to leave them. And you'll join in with the script that says you must accuse anyone who even questions your oddness of being a hater, and of wishing you ill, and of even trying to wink you out of existence. Such ridiculous, preposterous, stupid, nonsensical, addled accusations that you leave the target of those accusations unable even to counter them, except to say that they're not true. A weak response indeed. But how do you respond to the man who tells you your hair's on fire when plainly it's not? The claim is so ludicrous that you understand immediately that there's no point in trying to reason with someone who is, obviously, crazy. And that's the last thing we conclude about you as we toss your resume into the shredder, or make a mental note to remove you from our contacts, or tell our family, colleagues, and friends to avoid you, or look for ways to end the conversation and go somewhere else. Because as soon as you announce that you, quote, use other pronouns, end quote, you also announce that any interaction with you at all is now a minefield, strewn with tiny gotchas of your own devising, gotchas that are utterly meaningless, but that you've somehow invested with great significance, and that can ruin my life or career as soon as I spring one. Look, you've tried with this utterly nonsensical pronouns thing to hijack a fundamental building block, pronouns, of the most important and useful way we humans have to communicate the basic day-to-day aspects of everyday living to those around us. You're trying to transform the tool we all use so effortlessly to convey basic meaning to others into a minefield salted with potentially devastating traps located in random and ever-shifting secret locations. Outwardly, at least, we might comply with your presumptuous, egotistical, arrogant demands, but inwardly the very best thing we conclude about you is that you're kind of a ditz and an idiot. The worst thing we conclude about you is that you're crazy. Lastly, I'll end on as conciliatory a note as I can, along with some advice. Go ahead and be who you are. You live in America where that kind of luxury state of mind is possible, at least for now. But don't try to demand that others do and say things you want them to do and say, and if they don't somehow, you'll whine loudly and long enough to cause them some great inconvenience. Now some more advice for you. Be really thankful that you live in America where this kind of, frankly, insanity can even get a hearing. You're the living manifestation of what's known as a first world problem. A problem that only societies that are rich and prosperous and free and very, very generous have. In most other parts of the world, you'd be carted off to the loony bin on a good day. On most other days, in most other places, you'd disappear, never to be seen or heard from again. Lastly, above and beyond all your navel-gazing, try to become a productive member of society so that you have something genuinely good and substantive to look back on in your later years. Something that actually transcends your current obsession with yourself and others' opinion of you. The bottom line is that in nearly all cases, when we hear that you use custom pronouns and that you demand that we use them too, we nearly unanimously consider you a self-absorbed little twit with far too much free time and far too little brains to do anything constructive with that time. You're a first world spoiled baby.